Welcome, my alumni friends. My name is Jim Wright. I'm the Director of Alumni Services. And again, grateful that you're joining us for another Facebook Live broadcast. We will continue to have recovery made real themes. And it's so cool that we're able to come on virtually and be able to talk to you and share with you. We have a wonderful guest today, and I'm going to share a little bit about him. It's Christopher Heimerman, who is a former Gateway and attended our Aurora services in 2019, which was pretty cool. In addition to that, after reading through his recovery bio, he does a lot with nature and recovery. And I think he's going to, and we talked about it, that he's going to speak specifically nature run in the woods. The fact is that he finds a lot of relief. He's able to think about his recovery. I thought it was really awesome when he told me that he doesn't even put a headset on anymore because he couldn't hear the birds. He couldn't hear the animals in the woods when he was running. He is he's been running a long time, and he's also been preparing for marathons and other types of races that relate to, again, his recovery. And I think also that he did launch, it's called 40,000 Steps podcast. And he has a lot of his own guests on, which is something that I'm sure he'll share a little bit about and how important that is to help him with his continued recovery, be able to have topics like mental health, in addition to having endurance. Athletes actually come on and talk about their recovery and why running makes it something special for them. So anyway, welcome, Christopher.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks everyone out there for tuning in. It's a pleasure to meet everybody, right?
Yes, sir. No, it's wonderful to know that I was thinking, and I'll let you share a little bit about your story here, but I was thinking that I remember that I used to run, and I don't do that anymore. And I don't know, maybe that'll help me with my own recovery. So why don't you share a little bit about your own story and how meditative the process has become when you're out there exercising?
Well, first off, I'll tell you that a little bit goes a long way. When I met my wife 12 years ago, she had never run. She was actually a manager of her high school cross country team. We got into running together, and now she's run 8 marathons and I've run 5, and I will never catch her because every time that I sign up for an event, she signs up too. Full disclosure, I was an endurance athlete, even when I was in the thick of addiction. I would spend, we were training for a marathon leading up until me doing intake at Gateway. We would run 16, 17 miles over the weekend. I would convince myself that I had sweat out all the toxins, that I was going to get it right that next week. I wasn't going to go back to the drink. And every time I did, I would drink my way through the work days. I would manage to hide all of this from Kayla. And I should say trigger alert for everybody out there, because I know that this is familiar to some folks. However, when I finally accepted some help and I went to Gateway, it really was the beginning of me untapping my true potential as an athlete. As you know, the day after I was discharged, I ran a marathon that next morning. Like I said, we had been training leading up to that. That afternoon, sat down to do some journaling, which, journaling was a huge tool that I had learned in Gateway. Always been a writer. Right. And sat down to write, what I thought was journaling. Eventually turned into a memoir that I hope to have published soon. And one thing led to another, made my story public, and then launched the podcast. And it's just been an incredible ride. And as you mentioned, we're taking on a new challenge. My wife, Kayla, and I are training for our first 50K. That's 31 miles. And that's
gosh.
I know. That's in October. And then I did something really crazy. a guest who was on the podcast, a friend of hers, loved the episode and said, look, if you want to do something really challenging, I'll pay your registration for this 101K in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So December 12th, I'll be running a half marathon that morning, then resting during the day, and then starting at 8 o'clock that night, running a 50 miler. So 63.1 miles over the course of probably about 15 hours. It's going to be something.
Oh my gosh. How does your body hold up with this?
Well, it's funny you ask, because if I were to like run my typical pace, it couldn't. So I'm in the process of embracing slowing down. And it's cool because when I slow down, I enjoy the run more. I'm no longer cranking hard rock in those earbuds like you mentioned. I'm out there and truly enjoying the process, which is such a huge theme for us in recovery, right? Actually enjoying, the process of recovery and appreciating all the little things that we've given ourselves when we gave ourselves the gift of sobriety. So slowing down is the absolute key to running ultra marathons. And I'm still figuring that out. I still find myself looking at this doggone Fitbit and be like, slow down. So always learning all the time.
Well, I recall, didn't know that actual recovery was possible sober in a park, or to actually listen to nature. You shared yesterday with me that was really, this is your fun runs when you run into the woods and listen to the nature. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Sure. In all of our past marathons, we would spend the bulk of our training running on city streets. Right. Sometimes we would run on paths that would weave through a park. So maybe for a mile and a half, we'd be running among tall trees. I mean, it was always pavement. It was always concrete that we were running on. And now we've really made a concerted effort to run on trails, be it crushed limestone or if it's dirt, technical trails, because you're really able to tap into nature. When you feel your feet hitting the ground. For me, being really mindful and having sort of that connection with, running on the soil, it's very cathartic.
Very earthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little bit, crunchy, a little bit, granola-y. But being, like you said, being among the trees and being able to sort of witness the beauty of the world, occasionally looking up. And my girls and I were out for a hike yesterday in a forest preserve. Cool. And one of my girls literally said, "Don't forget to look up." And I did. And they were like, "Look at the sparkles, look at the sky, sparkling between the leaves of the trees." And they're right that it's remarkable if we just allow ourselves the opportunity to ground ourselves and appreciate our surroundings.
Yeah. And moving back to the Midwest was a big deal because we happened to be in Wyoming that was very barren for about 7 years. And we didn't see a lot of runners. There were a lot of people that were on the pavement. But when we moved back, where I had been raised and where I got sober, was that it's wonderful to have seasons. And I know that we're limited, right, with your running. So my question is, you're running, you're going into the woods, you have a great setting. What happens when things cool down? What's it like for you to run when you start seeing a little bit crisp in the air and a little bit of snow?
I love it. I am my father's son. I run hot. I would much sooner be cold than to be hot. I really enjoy it. There's a bit more of a challenge that comes to running in the cold, but there's kind of a rule of thumb that when you're running, you can basically add 20 degrees, and that's how it how it feels. So for me, my happy place is going out for a run in like somewhere between 45 and 50 degrees with a little bit of a breeze. I love that crisp air. Right now, like I went out for a run yesterday. I went out and I did some hills, and look, it was miserable because it's so humid. However, I will stop for a moment and say that I had an epiphany when I was out there. And, like I said, I was doing some hills. We've got a sled hill nearby, so I'm doing those. And I get up to the top one time and I was like, I can waste my energy like bemoaning the heat and, feeling resentful, which is completely like ridiculous. Or I can appreciate the fact that I can withstand the heat and that I can do this, despite the fact that it's so humid outside. And what do you know? When I ran home, it was relatively easy given the conditions. So no, I like that 101K. It's going to be December 12th in the rolling hills of Council Bluffs. So I'm fully expecting 35 degrees, snowfall.
Right.
Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
Bring it on. So I was thinking just about your recovery, and why don't you update us a little bit? I know that you shared a little bit about the meditative, the spiritual, the looking up into the sky. Where is your recovery when you're not running?
Well, I mean, I can kind of break down my program, which obviously health and fitness is a big part of that.
Right.
One of the central tenets of my recovery is doing exactly what we're doing right now.
Right.
Sharing my story became absolutely pivotal for me. I'll throw the asterisk on it though, and say that obviously what we're doing is not for everybody. Right. However, at its fundamental core is being open and honest.
Yeah.
You might not start up a podcast like I do. You might not have those sort of liberties. However, simply being open and honest about your story with the people who you love is huge. I kind of got cold feet about coming out about this because I knew that, there's kind of this first do no harm concept, right. And it's part of the 12 steps in that fellowship where it's like, don't do anything that could cause harm. So I was like, boy, do I want to hurt my wife unnecessarily and my parents and people who are going to learn these things about me? And I was actually speaking with a friend of the family who's a pastor, a Methodist pastor. Kayla used to work for him. And I leveled with him. I was like, I just don't know about this. And he said, look, explore your soul. My take on this is that when you share these things with the people you love, it is only going to endear you to them. And he could not have possibly been more right. So being open and honest is huge as just kind of a general ethos in terms of some of those other like parts of my recovery program, because I like to take life a la carte, frankly. I like a little bit of this. I like a little bit of that. Yep. I enjoy Eastern doctrines and philosophies. I very much subscribe to meditation and mindfulness. Again, that's the feet hitting the soil and appreciating Mother Earth. I see a therapist regularly and I take my medications. When I got to Gateway, I was so eager to finally see a psychiatrist and get on the right meds because what I learned was once I put down the drink and I'm able to get my brain back to a healthy state, and then on top of that, then I take the proper medications and alcohol is no longer running interference. It's like, wow, I can have something resembling a normal brain because I've always known that I'm not normal. So the therapy, medication, mindfulness, meditation, there is a little bit of a religious component there. I'm always working on my relationship with God. It changes every day. But again, that's sort of appreciating the journey and the process and being okay with the fact that if my relationship with God is imperfect, that's natural. That's life, right? If we're not working on something, we're stagnant, we're static, we're not growing.
Yep. I love that, staying connected. That was something I share every day with every alumni. Our alumni community is very, very strong. You're one of those people. In addition to that, when we, it's so important to be able to do that. It gives me chills thinking about when you and I first talked on the phone, and I could tell based on what how our conversation went that, look, how can we get better? Okay, life today might not be so good, but how do I get better together? That we component, which you hear in 12 steps. I've learned a lot too, that there are so many different ways to recover. And people say, well, what is your program? I said, I love the a la carte. I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that, and I do it daily. So if I stay within all those steps, it reminds me of who I am, and I'm able to accept. I was also thinking, we've got a little bit of time left here, but I was thinking the acceptance part in your own recovery. How's the family? How's the family right now with you?
Oh, great. It's great. But again, there's always work to be done. I have open and honest conversations with Kayla. And frankly, since we're being, open and honest here, we have talked about doing couples counseling.
Okay.
And we have still not found the right place to do it. That is something that we're going to be adding. But we haven't found that right place yet, but we continue to have the conversation where we might have a rough day. We might have a disagreement, and one of us will be like, hey, where are we at with couples counseling? When are we going to do that? And so it's going to happen. But yeah, it is a process. And it's the same thing with, a lot of my relationships with, my parents and stuff, where it's an ongoing process of working on healing together.
Okay. That's great. So do you have any final thoughts before I go ahead and go through a little recap?
Well, I'm going to do the shameless plug. You mentioned the podcast, 40,000
Yes.
Steps Radio. And that's a huge part of my recovery program is, like you said, connecting with people.
Right.
We've had a number of people on who come from all walks of life, be it mental health experts, people in long-term recovery. Erica Sandor-Zur, who was on the episode that came out on Tuesday, 20 years of addiction. Now she's 42 and trying to be the first 42-year-old woman in recovery to play in a tennis Grand Slam. So I would ask that people check it out, 40,000 Steps Radio, and connect with me. I always say that I love being a resource for folks. So if you go to 40,000steps.com, you're going to find my contact information. And I love hearing from people and having that community.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Christopher, for coming on today. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing with our alumni community and every step of the way together. So thank you again for visiting with us and sharing with our alumni community.
I appreciate you, Jim. I appreciate you so much. This is wonderful. And I can't wait to keep doing stuff like this.
Great. Okay. I wanted to just share a little bit about, you can see that we have the most spectacular event of the year. It's going to be our alumni reunion it's going to be held here in Chicago, UIC campus at picnic grounds. And it's going to be September 25th, which is on a Saturday from 12 to 4. In addition to that, we also are doing great with our Gateway Connect app. This is so easy. All you have to do is go to the App Store, search G Connect from Gateway, create your new account, and then access will be granted. We have so many different ways for us to connect together. I love watching and sharing with people that are Gateway alums that actually have decided to share their milestone dates and things of that sort. So it is wonderful. We also have 5 different on-site events. We're doing a lot of in-person that's actually taking place in Aurora, that's actually taking place in Springfield, Caseyville. It's going to be in Carbondale. In addition to, we have a Lake Villa Gurney picnic tomorrow. So anyway, we Next week, we're going to have our Gateway Connect app team visiting with us and share a little bit more in detail about how easy it is to access and why you should download it, in addition to the fact that we understand we want to stay connected. So thank you all for coming on today. Please have a not so humid weekend and be able to know that we care about you, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, Christopher, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. We're going camping, so pray for me, all right?
All right. Thank you.
Take care.